here we are. We are here with one of my favorite people from one of my favorite organizations, Jason Herrboldt. Tell us what you do for First Bank and Trust.
Well, thanks for asking me to join you, Ivani. I appreciate being here. And I share the same sentiments with you and your organization. Name is Jason Herrboldt. I am serving as both market president and, for First Bank and Trust in Sioux Falls. In addition to that, I serve as chief retail officer for the organization. So I have two roles, and been with the organization for almost 16 years.
Yeah, and a great organization it is. You do all do a lot for our community. One of the things I'm so incredibly impressed with in terms of our community is our relationship with our banking industry. There's some communities that just have a really toxic relationship with their banking community. And ours is really marvelous. It really is, in terms of the leaders that they develop, in terms of how they engage in the community. What do you think is behind that? How do you think that, is it, I see you work, so I know it's not luck, but somebody might look at it and say, oh, that came together nice. How do you get that type of community?
Well, you have the culture of the community that you're in, and then you have the cultures of the individual organizations. And let's begin with the Sioux Falls community. The culture is woven tight. Sioux Falls has been a collegial and a cooperative city, which really honestly started with leaders from generations ago. And it's woven tight into the culture. And when you rise in the ranks in any respective business, it becomes a expectation, if you will, that if you want to be a leader in the business community, you have to work with your counterparts at other organizations to work for a cause that is bigger than both yourselves or even the organizations that you work in. And I think you see that playing out day in and day out. One of my closest friends works for a competing bank, and there are times we compete with one another, but the vast majority of the time we're working together to help this community forward and to work with others and bringing people together. That's what banking is. It is more than taking deposits, making loans, and helping people with financial plans. It is seeing to it that your community is thriving, because if your communities thrive, so will your businesses.
Yeah, that's the good stuff right there. That's the real thing. I think that's impressive. The other thing is just within your institution, in and of itself, you have some people that I'm a huge fan of in your organization. You all are present in the community. You served as president for our downtown Rotary, and I want to touch on that a little bit later. But you have folks throughout your organization that we see out in the world doing things, from coaching softball or little league or whatever to, being on the board or a nonprofit. Why is that so important to your organization?
Yeah. As I indicated even just a few minutes ago, if your communities thrive, your business will thrive. That is part of our organization's culture. That goes back to 100 plus years ago when the organization was originally founded. It's in our DNA. It's not even, you can't escape it. You don't want to escape it. It's part of you. It's part of the job. If you want to work at First Bank and Trust, you are signing into a culture that is not only collegial internally, but you're signing into a culture where the expectation is that you are helping your community succeed. And that is beyond just what you do in the walls of the bank. It involves active engagement in your community in a way that is progressive and mindful of the future.
That's awesome. Now to you specifically, which I think is great, because I had an opportunity to watch you to work up close. We've done things together, for our downtown Rotary, and I was really impressed in watching you lead through that, because you obviously were leading in a really difficult time when we were going through a lot of things. There was a lot of change. And first, I just want to speak about the task. You were an integral part in really transitioning that downtown Rotary into this new kind of model in terms of how we do programming. With the the conversations, excuse me. And they've been some really amazing conversations. The engagement has straight up We have people all over the world engaging with some of these things now. These big conversations that everybody believed we should have had are being had now. And you played a large part in that. Tell us just about that piece of it, that transition, and being in that role where you're essentially leading some of the community's most talented, most skilled, most successful leaders.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first, before responding, I want to make sure that your audience knows what an integral part you, Bonnie, were in helping Downtown Rotary transition over the last year and a half. We would not have been able to do it without you and your team. That is absolutely paramount that I think people need to understand. I think I have a couple responses to that. One, the Downtown Rotary Club already had a culture of leading. Had for years. It had a pretty strong history, and that helped pave a path for us. Had that path not been paved, I don't think we would have been as successful. We were the beneficiaries of a good culture. Now, when you go into an environment like we did over the last year and a half, there are two ways you can handle it. You can either say, woe is us, and just get through the year, or you can do an examination of what it is that that the organization needs to do to take it to the next level and take advantage, not in a bad way, but take advantage of the opportunity or the crisis that's in front of you to make things better. And that's what we did. And it took a team, as you well know. There was there was a number of key players in the Downtown Rotary Club that helped see it through. One thing I was very mindful of leading that team during that particular year was I was surrounded by talented people, like you said. I mean, Downtown Rotary Club is filled with executives from throughout Sioux Falls, so we don't have a shortage of talent. But making sure that you respect those talents. It is not a okay, you're the president of the club, you say what goes. You have to bring them in, let them do the things that they are skilled at. But the thing that I was most mindful of throughout is I was surrounded by people way smarter than I was constantly, and listening, doing more listening, and then taking those great ideas and trying to put some synthesis around it so we could take some actionable steps. So it was communication flow, doing a lot of listening, and then making sure that we had some actionable steps throughout the year. I think that was my style, but we certainly were beneficiaries of a great culture, and we just seized the moment.
Let's talk about that style, because while I take issue with the surrounded by people way smarter than you comment, I don't know if I buy that, but I do admire your style of leadership. I think, it is very calm and controlled. It keeps the energy in a good, safe space. But I don't think anybody questions whether or not you're serious. I don't think anyone questions if you're intentional or if you're purposeful in terms of how you're choosing your words, what it is you're trying to do. And I love measure. I think that's something that people things like taste and measure and restraint, I think it's what people don't talk about enough as virtues. You know what I mean? And I think in a world where it's Sunday, free, 1999, breaking news. I think in a world of all of that stuff, restraint, measure, calm, charm, class, timing, those type of things that are based in patience and understanding that there's a long game to it and understanding that there's other people involved in it. I think that it speaks to a certain thought process. Tell me what goes behind that. Where did that come from to see the world in that way?
Well, thank you. It hasn't been a style that I necessarily can claim, for my my entire life. It's been an evolution. I have been very fortunate in my career to be surrounded by executives, leaders that are measured in how they approach situations. And I'm very aware of good leadership when I see it, and I pay attention to it. And I've also benefited from being mentored by people that have those dispositions. And I've often found over the years is that it's very easy to lose one's control. It can happen easily. But if you want to see progress through, it's like running a race. If you go out sprinting, which is sort of like losing control. Yeah. If you go out sprinting in a long race, you will run out of gas. And in the case of leadership, you'll run out of cognitive gas if you cannot maintain kind of a steady, measured control throughout those engagements with others.
Yeah. So as you deploy it, though, especially in this world, it wasn't always in vogue, that type of thing, right? It was the loud, bold, brash, I'm going to take the world by the horns, dog eat dog person was the person who would ascend to positions.
Right. There's
like
business books that were...
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, right.
A lot of them still. How do you believe that you were able to ascend to where you are at with the tact and the style that you particularly have grown into?
Couple things. I think, again, I am very aware of people that I surround myself with. Mm-hmm. I try to surround myself with people that have those types of dispositions. It's not always controllable, but I do try to be thought mindful of that and surrounding myself with people like that. And therefore, I learned from them. The other thing is I've made mistakes in my career and I can see almost a direct cause and effect relationship between outcomes and how one handles situations. Mm-hmm. Bad outcomes usually follow bad behavior. Bad things happen. It's how you handle those things that leads to the next the outcome that is going to sometimes prove your destiny. Or so that I think that is probably the primary driver is those two things. I surround myself with people that are very mindful, and I've just learned over the years that if I can take a step back and not make rushed decisions, listen, and try to understand situations, the outcomes are far better. That and it's just less painful. It's less stressful.
Yeah. Right? That's always my thing. I always try to ask people, when we first started Think 3D, we would go into people's offices and we would give them the spiel and we were like, we can move this KPI and this KPI. We make you this much money and make you that much money. And we didn't know how to communicate what it was yet, especially the way that we go about it. And then there was just a certain point where we would go in there and we would just say, how do you feel when you come in here every day? Do you like it? And you can tell leaders for the first time we're able to be like, nah, not really. Mm-hmm. I don't enjoy myself. Like, okay, so we should do something about it, And it would be like, yeah, we should. And it's so interesting that when you get to that transparent place where people can just be honest about the experience and say, if it doesn't feel like you're winning, it's because you're not. So do something that just makes more sense and allows you to feel better. In a lot of cases, it's not that stereotypical thing, that caricature of a leader, which is dominance or always having to be the person with the idea, always having to be the person with the thing. And so many times, good leadership is managing the room, is keeping the energy righteous, is making sure that people say, okay, cool, we got all this stuff to do, but remember, this is where we're going. Mm-hmm. This is our North Star. Which is another thing that I really love about, your organization, the Fishback family, all of those type of things, is that there's a North Star.
Right. Very clear North Star.
You know what I mean? And there's a thing. Talk to me about that piece of it, because I think, especially as people struggle with workforce and everything, and people want to be in a place where they're really having an impact. Tell us about that North Star, what that kind of means for you and the organization, and how you guys live that.
Yeah. It is. I get almost goosebumps when I think about it and talk about it. Been there almost 16 years, and there is just never any doubt where the values are. Yeah. It's just never any doubt. That doesn't mean the behind the scenes are always just, going great, things happen. You're working through challenges every day. As when you and I were walking over to the studios, I was even telling you, like it's been a day, but the values of the organization are so clear and so well understood. And and it's not complicated. It is take care of your communities, take care of your clients first and foremost. Don't be driven by KPIs. Yes, you have to pay attention to key performance indicators. We get that, of course. But as long as you are paying attention to your communities and your customers and looking out for their best interest first, you're going to stumble at times. Grace. Offer that grace. But just do the right thing by your communities and by your clients first and foremost. The rest will all work itself out. And it's also about, many organizations are doing it, but we have really tried to pay close attention for a long time about making sure that our organization is inclusive to our employees and our clients, and making sure that we are leading in a positive way on the question of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not, I know it's become vogue, and it should be, but we've been trying to live it for a long time. It goes back to, during I don't know the exact story, but our organization, used to, back before women were able to vote. I mean, they were using our bank. I'm gonna get some of the details wrong, but the women's suffrage, they were using our bank to coordinate, so that tells you, just how passionate we've been about doing the right thing. Yeah. Sometimes before the environment is necessarily all that accepting of it.
Well, that's another thing too, is just in terms of you all is really genuine. I remember we were on a call. You all were so great enough to contribute to our Leaders of Tomorrow program, where we develop leaders at no cost to them, because we don't want any barriers to leadership. We want every human that wants it to have access to it, so we can better our community. But what struck me was, and there's a lot of people who gave to it and are still giving to it, and there's some people who give, and they're like, cool, let's see what you do, good, here's a check. Deeply appreciate it, but it wasn't any feels there. There wasn't any any emotion there. Sometimes we didn't really even engage with the person. But when we were on a call with you all for the gift that you gave, which I want to point out to people, $150,000 over 3 years, and I want to be clear about people because we don't think about that in dollars. That's almost 150 humans, human beings, people, parents, children, people in our community, people who might make your food, people who might pump your gas, people who might fix your home, people who might do your surgery. 150 humans are going to have access to leadership that they don't have access to in the same way currently, in a way that really challenges them. And to see the joy and the excitement and just the good vibes from you and the team was it juiced us up so much, just because it's there's people who really are in it with us. They really get it. They really want the same outcomes that we want. It just does something so different. And so when you say this, again, like you say, it's in vogue. Some people are doing it to collect workforce. Some people are doing it because it's the thing to do right now. But one of the things about you all is there's a genuine nature to that organization that's really rare.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. And those that work there, have worked there, still work there, I think universally would echo those statements. It's one thing we get right is culture. We get other things wrong, but we do get the culture stuff right.
Yeah, you guys do a great job with that. Well, speaking of which, one of the things that we are talking about, especially at CultureCon this year, is how folks are figuring it out. Yeah. What does that look like? We came through a rough year. Now, a lot of financial institutions had good financial years for a whole host of reasons. But there's so much where the numbers might have gone up, but a lot of things in the weeds, a lot of things in the cracks and the crannies and the crevices got worse. especially as we talk about people's mental health and people start to ask themselves these existential questions of why am I here? What am I doing with my life and everything? You all have worked through that in a lot of ways, and you're still working through it. But how did you start that process of figuring it out, and where are you at in that process now?
Well, we're still figuring it out. But really, it started with doing a lot of listening to what our staff was saying, doing a lot of reading. And when I say reading, I'm not saying going to social media to try to find people's opinions. I'm saying reading what the science is saying and what the experts are saying, and really framing a path that was based on the science and based on what our customers and our employees were saying. But it was a learning experience as we went along, like with everybody. But the one thing, and we talked about this before the camera started to roll, is offering grace. You have to recognize that everybody was doing the best they could, and we were going through kind of an internal kind of. Merging some technologies and merging some stuff within our own organization while this was going on. So we were not only, like everybody else, working through COVID, we were doing some internal stuff that was something that we had been working on for a while, that was really taking place last year, and so that added to the folks' workload. So we had to be mindful of those monumental challenges. Recognize first and foremost that people have good intentions. Employees have good intentions, and they want to do a good job. They did a good job. They worked hard. And you know what? If somebody stumbles because they're trying to work on a WebEx call and on a committee to try to figure out a problem, but yet they maybe have to work with their son or daughter on a school assignment. That's the way it was. That was the reality. So you're not going to move a team forward if you're not trusting your people and showing them grace when they have a bad day.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that was my favorite part of going virtual so hard in COVID, is seeing people's kids come in, or dogs or whatever, see people's come into, because, or a spouse walking in the background, doing whatever. I love that part, because what I think it did was it reminded people that these people go home. There's humans in there with them. They're sharing space with human beings. So what you send home, you participate in the energy that's going to that home, right? And you got to know that those decisions that you're making are affecting those people, that energy. And you get to see people are human. And sometimes we have this expectation, this leave it at the door mentality, that it just absolutely has to die because it has no value. This idea where you come and you're this different thing. You're the professional now. You left the person, you left the kids, you left the dog, you left the spouse, you left the sickness or illness that your family's dealing with, you left the challenges or frustrations, and now I'm a professional, all that's gone, and I'm yours for the next 8 to 10 hours. Nonsense.
I couldn't agree more.
Nonsense.
We're human beings at home, or human beings at the office.
Yeah. Well, and again, just tell me about that quick. How did you guys keep your money where your mouth is? Because I have this conversation with a lot of people, and they say it. God bless them. And you got to say stuff before you do stuff sometimes. So I'm not mad at that. But not everybody does it. How do you keep your money where your mouth is?
Back to the North Star. We don't take the eye off the ball. We try our best. Every single day, we try our best not to take off our eye off the ball. That is the most important thing to watch, which is, are you taking care of your customers? Are you taking care of your communities? And are you taking care of your employees? Decisions, people make thousands of decisions a day, whether they realize it or not. They're making decisions constantly. And last year, in particular, big decisions were getting made throughout the year. And as long as you can stay focused on why it is you're in business, why it is you exist, you can and then you have people around you to challenge, because we all at times will go off path, right? It's very easy as independent individuals or even as an organization. There's times that you could make a decision, but surrounding yourself with people that will help keep you accountable to the North Star is critical. It just so critical. It's important to have people in the room that say, all right, yeah, that may be the best decision for the income statement today, but think a few years down the road or months down the road, is there a consequence to that action? Just be mindful of that stuff. You're not going to always get it right, but make sure you have people with the right intentions in the room.
I think that's such a great one to leave it on. Just because, you have organizations now and they make mistakes and people are killing them. And people say, well, it's cancel culture, da-da-da-da. Well, there's some that make mistakes and they come through it just fine. And part of the reason is how they engage with it and their artifacts. There are certain folks, you take Nike, for instance. Nike has had a host of challenging PR things with various people that they've had, whether it be a Colin Kaepernick, whether it be a Tiger Woods, whether it be whatever, going back to civil rights leaders many years ago. And there is a history of it. And so when they say, we missed the mark on this one, somebody can go back and say, oh, well, we see how you did that there. And a lot of people don't have the artifacts. They don't have the history. And that's making a decision today that may pay dividends 25 years from now. To be able to say, well, you can believe us, you can trust us, not because you should, but because look at what we did 25 years ago. And I always try to be thoughtful about that decision. You never know how far, how long, or how high, Think 3D will go. But I just want to make the decisions that the people who have to deal with the ramifications of those decisions can be proud of.
Right. It takes great discipline. It takes great discipline to be mindful of the next generation of leaders and the leaders that are going to follow you, because it's just too easy to just think about what's the crisis today.
It really is. It really is. Well, I thank you so much for coming in. I think young leaders and anyone really benefit from hearing from folks like you, especially people that they can see, touch, that they can invite to coffee. That's one of the things that we're so proud about in terms of what we're trying to bring with the Exec Series, is that we want people to stop, not only, but want them to stop looking outside of themselves, outside of their community so much. And you got a lot of brilliant leaders here that you can access and really get some mentorship from. And obviously mentorship is something that we're really big on. So I really appreciate you being willing to come in.
Vonnie, I appreciate all that you do and that your team does. You're really moving things here locally. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. We appreciate you. Now, everybody, make sure that you keep up with us. Obviously, you can check us out and learn about Think 3D on letsthinkthreed.com. So make sure you go ahead and check that out. You can follow all of the socials under Think 3D Solutions. And of course, make sure when you see this, you like and subscribe so you can get everything as soon as it comes out. Until next time, appreciate you.